Everyone, and thank you all for joining us today. In this webinar, we will be covering everybody's favorite topic, data-driven growth and client-centric strategies. I'm joined by this incredible panel consisting of Tom Harper. He is the Chief Growth Officer at Blue & Co. For those of you who don't know Tom, he is extremely passionate about growth and never scared to look at new ways of executing strategies within his firm. Lainey Warsaw, she is the Marketing and Technology Manager at CLA. Lainey brings a very experienced perspective on the technology landscape and strategy for firms. And last but not least, David Toth. He is the Chief Growth Officer at Winding River Consulting, who, apart from being one of the world's best networkers, has helped numerous firms navigate marketing and technology strategies to maximize growth. And I'm Corinne Watchman. I am a solutions consultant at Introhive, and I've had the pleasure of working specifically with our accounting clients, partners, and prospects over the years. So in today's discussion, it's going to be centered all around how to operate as one firm and the push for doing that in today's landscape. Today's a hyper competitive environment. There are many reasons why firms are striving to break down silos between offices, service lines, and practice leaders. And because when you do that, you can better service your clients. You can find ways to bill more to your clients. You can retain talent and promote from within. You can save costs on systems and infrastructures, and the list goes on. So basically 1 + 1 = 5 in that equation, and you can check my math later on that one. So we've broken this down really into 3 main topics, all stemming off of this one firm concept: collaboration, cross-sell, and IT and systems integrations. And we are going to get everybody's point of view on the challenges and the successes they've seen trying to implement this within their firms. So just before we get started, the webinar is being recorded, and you can add any questions you want in the chat. We will have a question and answer period at the end. So we're going to start with collaboration. So David, from your perspective, what do you see as challenges in driving firm collaboration? And what have you seen firms do to sort of break down those silos with technology, process, or otherwise?
Awesome, Corinne. Well, thank you first and foremost for having me. I love your math, 1 + 1 = 5. So hopefully we can kind of dive a little bit deeper into that today. Collaboration, what a great topic. I think there's 4 different buckets that come top of mind when we talk about, challenges coming to collaboration, breaking down silos. The first being different departmental goals and priorities. When it comes to marketing, when it comes to growth, are we aligned with firm leadership and what the firm is trying to accomplish, whether that be capacity, new revenue, new logos, upselling, cross-selling? A lot of times we aren't seeing that marketing and growth team necessarily aligned with firm leadership or the executive committee. And then we end up taking on tasks or initiatives on our own. And I think that's one of the ways that we can improve collaboration, look at cross-functional roles like marketing operations or internal communications in order to really address what I see as a very strategic concern or issue when it comes to collaboration. The second area, cultural barriers. If we're in multiple offices or have had different offices, the pandemic's put a lot of emphasis around this one firm concept, and I know we'll talk more about that. But a culture might be very different, your growth culture, in one part of the country versus another. And so how are we leveraging culture as it relates to integrating collaboration and having core values, core processes that allow us to better communicate and ultimately collaborate? The third area, lack of leadership support. Who's the change agents in our firms? Is it marketing? Is it growth? Is it our CMOs, chief growth officers? Because there's a lot going on. It's fast paced. We're not used to moving fast. And we know technology is a driver in many cases, not just internally, but our clients are asking us those questions as well. And so how are we leveraging collaboration amongst a firm to create internal communication about what we're doing so our clients understand it as well, our partners understand it, right? I think there's a huge opportunity to take advantage of who's driving change and where technology is a part of that. And then the last point is just lack of communication and trust, right? Partners don't want to open up their book of business to upselling, to cross-selling, to potential other threats or opportunities within our firm. And so we have to use technology, we have to use change agents to help break some of those barriers down and get away from the silo mindset. So I hope that kind of gets the conversation started around collaboration.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, David. And I guess, Lainey, do you have sort of a response for that from kind of your seat in a firm on the technology side?
Yeah, definitely. So, being on the MarTech team, that can be defined many different ways, depending on what firm you're at. And for us, it's really important that we have that collaboration between IT and marketing on a consistent basis. Like we really truly see it as a partnership. And it's allowed us to kind of bring a vision together. But to David's point, you still need your change agents. You still need all these other components to it. So I would say something for us that's been such a game changer is bringing in a organizational change management group. And that's really allowed IT to focus on solution and development. It's allowed our business and marketing stakeholders to focus on outcome. And then it's bringing in those resources for trainings, communications, and bringing that change forward.
Awesome. And Tom, I know you have a comment here. So from a collaboration standpoint, anything that you're seeing at Blue & Co.?
One of the things that we see, and it's already been mentioned by David and by Lonnie, but one of the things that we see, especially over our journey towards greater and greater collaboration, is intention and being able to measure that collaboration. And I think that that's one of the real keys moving ahead, is being able to say, hey, it's a journey. Where we want to be from a collaboration standpoint is never ending. So what are we going to do as a firm to be able to enhance our collaborative philosophy, our culture, to be able to make that to become the true reality of the future? And I think technology plays an absolutely key role in that, but I think it touches all the things that we're talking about here. So it's a never-ending journey. And I think that being able to measure it and coming back to it and coaching to it is absolutely critical. So I think from a change agent standpoint, and I would say everybody here is a change agent in one form or another, and probably in the audience too, is how do you go about continuing to coach that? How do you go back and reflect back on what has been measured to date, and being able to work with your folks to be able to really achieve things that they don't think that they can actually do at today's landscape. So being able to help them to be able to do that is really one of the things that I think is going to become a key aspect of the marketer of the future. We talk about all having MBAs and having strong IT backgrounds. I think part of it is also having a kind of a PhD in psychology, being able to be that change agent, be able to coach your folks to be able to collaborate in ways that they've never thought of doing before.
Awesome. Yeah, I feel like this topic really kind of leads us into the next topic, because you really can't, cross-sell appropriately if people aren't talking to each other across, locations or departments. So it's and I like the kind of the touch on culture as well. I think that's one of the hardest things to probably shift in any organization, especially some deep rooted, some deep rooted talent within firms sometimes. So, but I do. I'm seeing trends that people are putting the importance on it. They are seeing the benefit to themselves and to the firm. They are starting to break down those silos. And one of the benefits coming out of that is cross-selling, actually. So not to put you on the spot again, Tom, there, but I kind of wanted to get your perspective from the cross-selling perspective, point of view, and see what strategies you're looking at for in the future, or what things you've tried in the past that might be successful in putting you in the right direction there.
Once again, cross-selling is a continuum, and it's something that we really are, in my mind, we're probably about halfway down the journey of what we really need to be able to do. And for us, it is including and educating across the firm in terms of everything that we can provide to our clients. And sometimes that can be a little overwhelming, as an individual is very used to being an expert in their one particular area, and now being asked to be able to look at a wide variety of different areas can be a little daunting. So one of the things that we've done, I think, very well is being able to have more and more team selling, team opportunities to be able to do that business development as a small team. So what we try to do is we try to understand early on as possible what the core needs are of the potential client or current client, and then be able to kind of build around that. What expertise do we need at the table? And what we try to be able to do is be able to put together that customized team, but being able to have that team actually kind of educate each other. And I think that, to me, is where it becomes really powerful, is being able to bring a great, unique solution to a client. And as we're all seeing, the needs of our clients are becoming more and more complex. But then seeing, from a variety of different chairs that are sitting at the table from your firm, seeing the different services that can be provided, and seeing the client being able to sit there and truly embrace it all, I think is really key. So that's one of the things that we've tried to do more and more of, is being able to have more people sitting at the table with a client, being able to literally bring individuals to even routine client calls, being able to bring people from other areas, because a lot of times they just have a different perspective than what you have as maybe even as a client director or client partner with regards to that particular client.
I think that's a great point from a strategic growth perspective too. Like upselling today, going upstream, you have to have more services to keep clients sticky because of the competitive landscape and the trust advisor factor that we have with our clients. I think technology is also helping accelerate cross-selling significantly, because it's creating more transparency about what opportunities exist. And so I think those are two key areas that kind of come with the technology side, from both strategic growth, but also creating more transparency to the entire firm about how we can generate more revenue that's more specific to our strategic growth plans.
Yeah, and Lane, from your perspective, do you kind of resonate with that? It takes support as well from the infrastructure, and also the technology that we are putting in place to enable some of these services. What are you seeing successful in that regard?
Yeah, definitely. So, I think I have a unique perspective here. It's very much internal facing. And I would say, as far as some of our core values go, it's transparency and collaboration are two pieces of those values. And what does that mean for MarTech? It means that we really have the support from our leaders and from firm-wide to understand who knows who, to start building that internal network. And so with that support, we're able to actually leverage technology to do so, and help each other go to market. So, you can talk the talk, but walking the walk and making sure that you can actually implement the tools and technology you need to get there has been really awesome to see.
Any other points to kind of bring up on the cross-selling point of view that?
I think the only other thing that kind of overlaps with both what Tom and Lainey were talking about is accountability, and creating accountability, and how technology, like a tool like Introhive, allows us to do that. Yeah. Knowing that there's just data that we can now make actionable when it comes to pursuing opportunities that make sense with the rest of the firm in the way that we want to grow. And so I think a big portion of this is, how do we create accountability? Where does that start in terms of leadership, transparency, change agents? But without accountability, it's hard to execute some of these conversations.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's really easy in practice. This client would be a great candidate for this service, but it does take the need and the want, and you to get out of your everyday life, and you're already doing a job. So it does take a little bit of a change agent to make you want to put in that extra effort, or just change the status quo in terms of how you normally would go about going after an opportunity.
Corinne, I was just going to mention just one last thing is that one of the things we're finding at Blue is one of the things that it's not formulaic cross-selling. And that's one of those things that I think for a lot of accountants, they think, okay, we're going into this particular account, we'll just bring these particular services. And what we're finding is that we're having to be nimble. We're having to really be creative. And because as we're understanding the needs, we might be bringing in other services that we never thought of before, being able to serve that particular client. So I think also being able to have that dexterity to be able to, and flexibility to, in your cross-selling, to be able to bring in new services and ones that you might not have thought of originally is really becoming critical. And that's one of the big things we're learning at Blue over the last year or so.
Yeah. And I think that's timely as well as, firms are expanding, they're expanding their offering. It's almost impossible to grab hold of all the new services that are coming out and sort of timing it right with the that you currently have. So yeah, it definitely is, a team effort, and collaboration will drive a lot of those kind of initiatives and opening up new services to those existing accounts. I guess on that vein, and again, I think everything ties into itself, but once you have the collaboration, you're focusing on cross-selling, you do need the technology to sort of underpin all of this within the firm. I think we're seeing, a lot of key topics such as we want everything to be integrated. We want to have one golden record. We want, to look into one system and be able to answer all of our questions. So I guess, Lainey, from your perspective, what has been some successes and some challenges, and what are you guys currently working on to try and get to that?
Sure. So I asked Bing Chat, which is Bing's AI assistant earlier, how many marketing and sales technologies are out there. And it gave me a number back from 2020, which I'm sure it's increased significantly still from then, but is around 9,000 that it provided. And that just goes to show that, it's a very competitive landscape, and there's a lot of tools and technology. And with a firm of our size, you have different needs with different groups. And so what we often see is people coming to us with, I need this and I need it now, and here's why. And so it's making sure we take a step back and not looking at the next shiny object, but thinking firm-wide, how is it going to help us and how can we integrate it in a streamlined way so everyone can leverage it. And I'll say something that's important for us is smart tech. It's making sure that whatever we're getting, whatever we're implementing is very complementary of each other and highly integrated, but also creates a lot of automation. Something that we hear often is, I don't want to have the administrative burden of having to enter anything in or even have to look at tools and technology oftentimes. So with that, what can we just ingest? How can we build this gold mine of data and then surface up a really simplistic, actionable view for our users? And that's something that has been pretty core to what we're doing. I'll say something too. User persona is really important. Understanding your users, and that not everyone is going to be an activator. Not everyone wants to have that, carve out the time to have that BD focus. So it's making sure that you're adjusting the needs and the wants based on who those user personas are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you hit on two amazing topics there. The first one being, when you're putting a new technology in place, you're trying to make the process more seamless for everybody. And sometimes the opposite happens and is true. And that's, kind of counterintuitive. And so I think there is a big focus on how do we make sure that the technology that we are bringing in is going to work with our infrastructure. It is going to make the process easier. Not everybody is going to use it the same. So those personas are definitely critical. Tom, I see you nodding your head over there. Any comments on your side on that infrastructure for Blue and what you've seen being successful?
I can't say it nearly as well as Lonnie can, but I agree with 100% of what she's saying. The other thing that I guess I would bring into this is learning curves with technology. One of the things that I find with with our internal teams is that when they look at a new technology, almost the first question I get in the role that I play is, what's the value and how easy is it going to be for me to learn this and master this? And so, I think a lot of accounting firms are kind of overwhelmed with how steep the learning curve was for things like ERP systems, CRM systems. So when they see a new technology coming in, they want to be able to say, okay, is this really going to be worth the investment? So it really gets into some of the user personas that Lonnie's talking about, is that you have some people that love new technology and other people that are like pushing themselves. You can almost feel them pushing away from the table when you bring up a new technology. Even if it's going to give them great benefit, they recoil because they look at that and go, oh, I've been down this path before. I had to learn this CRM system and it took me a year, maybe even longer, to really master it. So I think that those are some of the things that we see as facilitators of bringing new tools and new technologies to our teams is I'm always trying to look for a tool that has high impact, but also is fairly easy for the majority of the teams that I work with and people on those teams to be able to use and adopt. I look at adoption very closely with regards to new technology.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And sometimes it's those people that are the biggest detractors. If you can get them on your side, they will be the biggest proponents. But
yes.
I do find as the years go on, and I know we've been using technology for a long time, but yeah, it can become a little bit more tainted because you have a lot of successes, but you have one bad implementation, and that kind of taints the entire picture moving forward. So
people have scars. People have scars with regards to technology. So I think, for all of us, in terms of when we bring new technology to our teams, how we go about doing that is really critical.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And David, I know technology is not at all in your wheelhouse. I'm just kidding. What are you seeing from your end? I mean, I know you work with numerous firms on this exact matter and really trying to maximize growth with technology being at the forefront. What are you kind of seeing as successful on your end?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of history here, right? Tom, Laney both hit upon it. 10 years ago, when we were implementing CRM systems, it didn't work in most cases. It wasn't done by growth. It wasn't done by marketing. It was done by IT. So accountability, goals, purposes, how we track that ROI is totally shifted, giving us all a great opportunity. And there's tools now like Introhive that are helping us with adoption of CRM along that way. Ultimately, the question comes back to ROI. How do we prove the ROI that these investments have the strategic initiatives or objectives predefined that we're able to generate results for, having people be patient as part of that process, which requires collaboration, transparency, communication. We live in a fast, agile, nimble world today, especially around growth. Most firms don't act that way. And so how are we trying to create a level of innovation as part of this conversation today that doesn't necessarily exist? Laney talked about using, Bing Chat, right? HubSpot came out with a stat a couple weeks ago that 55% of searches next year will be done through some sort of chatbot, right? Mm-hmm. Think about that. We're totally changing the way that we're searching, which is having a lot of implications about how we're using technology, how technology is leveraging tools like AI to say, hey, here's what I want, help me get that outcome around it. Putting a lot more emphasis around dashboards, data visualizations, right? Because that's going to help us create a narrative that helps us communicate the ROI across the rest of the firm. And the last point that I wanted to bring up, somebody started talking about data governance. And the importance of golden records and how does all the technology flow. I see a lot of firms right now trying to figure that out. We want our practice management system tied into CRM, tied into data intelligence, tied into marketing automation. Okay, well, that's all great. Do we have the marketing operations role in place to help with cross-functional collaboration to make sure that this data is becoming actionable and useful versus just beautiful? Because that's what happens in a lot of cases. The problem is, in some cases, if we start with data governance, then it's really hard to create an actionable strategy for growth in marketing because we're more concerned about the data. Vice versa, we know that marketing wants to execute, but if data isn't being intact, it gets more complicated when we start tying systems into each other. So there's a fine line there that, again, I think Tom said, you have to be fluid. You have to be open to adopting and adapting quickly. And so I think all of these are great conversations and points that are exciting around what technology and AI is bringing, especially to the growth sector of our firms. But understanding it comes back to change management and having a change agent that's able to control all of these things, realize innovation is going to be part of this process along the way.
Yeah, and I guess on the data governance piece, not to put anybody on the spot, but it is something that I see a lot of firms kind of struggling with, is just how do we put something in place so that we can get ourselves in a place where all of our systems can start talking together and we can trust that they're getting the right data in the right places. Has that been a struggle for you, Lainey, on your end there?
Yeah, so I would say especially, I mean, we're bringing up AI, but there's been quite, I won't say fire drill, but a huge push this year around, we need to stop what we're doing, focus on this, get a handle on it, make sure that we're governing it and that we have a sense of what this looks like. And I'll say too, as far as our tools and technologies go, it's kind of coming whether we want it to or not, as far as AI goes. And a lot of our tools and technologies are coming out with these new features that are so exciting and so innovative, leveraging AI assistance. And so it's making sure that we kind of have a full sense of what that looks like, but then, not limiting where we can, so that we can leverage it in our day-to-day operations and really use it as a firm.
Absolutely. Yeah, and there's so many factors to AI. I think we could probably have a whole other webinar on that, and maybe we will topic for next time. But yeah, absolutely. I think data is a very important topic, and having it available so that you can sort of action or you leverage it for AI in the future is going to be extremely valuable. So yeah, I love the discussion. I wish we could go on for forever, but just as we wrap up here, we have one more question for each panelist, kind of an open-ended question. We just wanted to get sort of your points of view on what are the top 3 trends you are going to be seeing in the accounting industry in the next 3 to 5 years. And I guess, Tom, I'll start with you just because you're the first one here. Box.
The 3 trends that I see over the next, let's say, 3 to 5 years is, I think one of the things that we're going to see is, we all talk about in the accounting space, the movement to advisory and getting away from audit and tax and moving towards that mythical advisory status. And I think one of the things that's going to happen over the next 3 to 5 years is refinement in that. It's going to go from being cliche to actually being defined. What is a great business advisor in accounting, and what does that mean? And I think it touches on a number of the things that both Lonnie and David were talking about. They're outstanding with regards to collaboration. They embrace the proper technology. They're incredibly client focused. They're not fearful of business development. They have a growth mindset. They really try to push towards that. So I think we're going to start to see more and more of that. And we're going to see different terms, I think, come out of that. I think that's going to be really interesting to see over the next 3 to 5 years how the accounting field really evolves with regards to how do we go to market, how do we talk to our clients. I think the other area is probably one more of a very traditional area, but I think in operating costs. I think that leveraging the technology that we're talking about here to drive down operating costs is going to be critical, because the firms that have the lowest operating costs are going to be the most flexible. So, I mean, that comes down to leveraging AI appropriately, automation, outsourcing, and all of our firms are probably doing that to one degree or another, but being able to pull that together to really have that strategic orientation to be able to have a competitive edge with regards to your operations, I think is going to be key. Last but not least, I think we're going to see a wide variety of new partnerships that are going to be geared towards growth that we're not seeing today. So I think most accounting firms are traditionally looking at M&A opportunities, and that will always continue. And I think traditionally we've had new service launches and new niche areas being created. And I think that's always also going to continue. But I think what you're also going to see moving ahead is more joint ventures. You're going to see people reaching out to key, maybe non-traditional organizations to be able to leverage, to be able to bring expertise quickly into their firm. We're starting to do more of that at Blue, and I think we're going to continue to do more of that, and also leveraging co-marketing. So I think, being able to partner with unique partners to be able to bring ultimately value to our clients, I think is going to be key. So I think it's a great time to be a marketer. I think it's great to be in the technology space, because I think you're going to be some of the key leaders moving ahead to helping your accounting firms to be able to grow and grow successfully.
Yeah, very, very well said. Lonnie, from your perspective, what would be your 3 top trends?
So Tom touched on it a little bit, but M&A, I mean, it's something I would say is overall top of mind for the industry as a whole, and something that I think we're slowly moving towards more and more as a focus there. And so also digital transformation. I myself have gone through a number of different digital transformations in my career. And, we just start to see that more and more. How can we start integrating our ERP with our CRM, with everything else at the firm, and make sure that everything's talking to one another, and that we have that data governance, that we have the master data management, that we really understand what that looks like, and we're not having 20 places to enter the same thing, so we're definitely starting to see that trend more and more. And then lastly, data and analytics, I would say, is just such a cool space, and it's great to be a part of it, and really just kind of surface those really important data points, so we can help our teammates make decisions, not just from a BD focus or from sales or marketing, but firm-wide, with resourcing, with scheduling, with some of these other components, and kind of bringing that all together.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think the digital transformation is definitely a key point, and will continue much further into the future for sure. And David, how about you from your perspective?
Well, if I think 3 to 5 years out, I wish I had a crystal ball. I'm thinking 1 to 3 years out. Things are moving so fast right now. I think the number one thing, and Lainey and Tom talked a little about M&A and private equity and what PE is doing to the profession, partnerships to corporations, this idea that we're shifting from maybe a trusted advisor to sometimes transactional, right? We don't have as many people that we can leverage in the same ways we used to. Certain elements of the business are going to be driven by AI, in some way of a commodity, but ultimately, right, we're looking for experts in specific areas, and we don't care if they're down the street or in our community anymore, right? We want to know that you're the best at what you do in construction, and if we're in California and you're in Ohio, that's not going to stop us from working with you, because we're trying to first focus transactionally what makes the most sense for our business, and then develop that relationship as a trusted advisor versus how has this business grown through the trusted advisor model. And so I think private equity is putting pressure on that. They don't care where revenue comes from. They need revenue, right? Consolidation is causing a lot of mid-market firms to focus going more upstream with opportunities. So that goes to Tom's point on the advisory side and the importance of having deeper services to create a stickiness factor. But I think you're going to see a lot of disruption in what that relationship looks like and how that's evolving. I think secondly is governance and leadership. That is a critical part to the firm's growth and succession going forward. When we talk about leadership, when we talk about what are the different roles that we need, this whole partnership model, we can't run firms like that anymore, because of the way that we have to be able to make decisions, the way that partners need to bill their time versus just focusing on rainmaking or missmaking in those cases. They don't have those disposable hours anymore. It's critical that we have a governance structure in place with a C-suite team that's helping us innovate and connect the dots cross-functionally going forward. So I think there's a lot of emphasis around that right now. And I would say that ties just as much into our growth teams. I will say this right now. I think CMOs are the change agents within our firms. Our marketers and growth leaders are the change agents. We are the closest to our clients, to our partners, to the technology, to the organizational structure of our firms. And so the way that we're growing going forward requires new rules and roles along that way. We're used to saying, here's a lead, go chase it. Well, how can growth help nurture that from 1 to 7 versus just 1 to 3, and then bring in the professionals at the right time? And you're seeing more of these BD roles, factor into how we're qualifying and developing relationships. Deloitte recently published something around this whole idea that the future of B2B sales is yes and. It's not either or. It's yes and. It's digital and human. It's not digital or human. And I think a lot of us have been in firms that realize, oh, it came in through digital. That's just the way it's. No, it's both today. So I think that comes back to the way we're building our teams and growing that growth organization going forward.
Yeah, no, that's great, and definitely a topic that I really appreciate your feedback and comments on. I know you have host quite a few events and bring a lot of these growth leaders, these CMOs together to discuss this very thing. What is the future and how can we be best prepared to as we advanced in this world. So I really appreciate everybody's time today. Just as we wrap up, I wanted to thank everybody for attending this webinar. I really hope that you enjoyed the topics discussed. I want to thank the panelists as well for joining us and bringing us these thoughts and this great knowledge within the field as well. We are going to open it up for question and answer, so you can put your questions in the chat. We got about 5 minutes, I believe, to answer questions, and anything that we won't answer, we will follow up after the webinar as well, just to make sure that we got every question answered. But again, thank you all very much, and we'll open it up for questions.
Karina, I think there's 3 questions in the Q&A.
Mm-hmm.
There is. Okay, I knew I was looking at the wrong chat. All right. Okay, perfect. So first question is, how do you build a culture that is more adaptive to technology?
Anybody want to start?
I would say, something that I have seen and something I go by is if you build it, they will come type of mentality oftentimes. And so, just to understand how are we measuring success, and then be able to give them that simplistic view into what they're looking for. I've seen that be pretty successful for us. And obviously there's an element of trusting the data always. And we talked about it a little bit earlier, and those are going to end up being some of your biggest advocates, the ones who are saying, I'm not touching this, I'm not going there. If you really focus your time on, well, what are you looking for? What are some of the issues that you're facing with this, and then kind of build your roadmap based on that to really to focus on those people. I've seen a lot of success, and once you make a change in their mindset, you'll start to have more support there.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
A couple of things that kind of jump out, on my end. One is learning and development is massive right now, right? It's a key part to our firm, younger generations, young professionals. We are hungry for it. So how are we building some of this into our learning and development infrastructure or strategies to let people be exposed to what's out there, what's going on, how we're planning to utilize it? I think technology is becoming part of our core value. Maybe that's technology, maybe that's innovation, but how are we elevating that strategically as a core value that we're clearly communicating within the rest of the firm? We know this is, going to take some trial and error. We know this is going to take some time, but we know this is core to who we want to be. And from an attention retraction perspective, culturally speaking, that's critical because, individuals don't want to go and start at a more archaic type of model. They want to see progressive opportunities coming forward. And the last thing I would say is communicating our successes and failures. So going to the point of Lainey, it's not just about mapping out our successes, our wins. I think it's equally as talking about our failures. Why did we try this? Why didn't it work? What did we learn from it? How are we going to get smarter? And realize that there's an element that we have to take some risks. We have to innovate and try. And so I think those three things really help build a culture that's going to be more adaptable to innovating and trying out new processes, operations, and technologies.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, nobody wants to fail, but I think that is the reality when you are at the cutting edge of new technology. So I think it is, realizing that some things might fail and that's okay, and you'll learn from those and move on and get stronger from it. Okay, the other question, how have you engaged change agents at your organization and worked with them to help achieve adoption of MarTech internally?
I can speak to that a little bit. And one of the things that we did with regards to our adoption now of Introhive and other platforms that we've been able to bring into Blue is that we intentionally go out of our way to make sure that we have representation at all of our offices on the core team, the core implementation team. So literally that there is literally 1 to 2 cubicles over, there is somebody that is an expert. And it's a lot easier to learn from the person 2 cubicles down than somebody that's maybe in corporate that's 200 miles away. So being able to kind of make it local, I think, is absolutely critical. So one of the things that we did with our Introhive implementation is wanted to make sure that we had people at a variety of different levels throughout the organization, from the partner level all the way down to the admin level, and being able to make sure that we had them dispersed appropriately so that as they were learning about Introhive, as we were going through our launch, they were already ahead on the learning curve so they could give their experiences to everybody in the office. And so that's something that I think from a change agent standpoint, being able to leverage other change agents is a really critical tool. So I love this question.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that is one of our plays in the implementation is, get the buzz internally, get people to learn from other, from their counterparts. And it's really critical to the success in changing the mentality in the organization and bringing in new technology, especially. All right, the other question, can you share examples of your biggest lesson learned when adopting new technology and securing executive support? We're thinking this is a big one.
It's a good question.
It is. It's a great question, and it's one that we all struggle with to varying degrees. I think I'll start it off, but I'm sure there are a lot of other. I'm sure Lanny and David will give all sorts of great examples on that they see at their organizations too, or that they know in the field. For us, one of the things that we recognize is that we're a firm of accountants and consultants. So it begins and ends at the return on investment. So you got to be able to have that. So be able to have that is going to be absolutely critical to show that this is going to have an impact on the business. If you don't have that, you're not going to get anywhere. So I always advise folks that are bringing technology up to the C-suite or to our managing partner, you have to have that. Also, I think what you really also have to be able to at least be able to articulate some way is how is that going to help us to be able to do our jobs better? And not necessarily, it doesn't have to be necessarily an ROI, but really how does it impact us and how does that align to our strategies? Almost all of our organizations have some sort of a set of strategic goals that we're trying to achieve. And one of the things that I always try to do is try to take a technology and see how does it line up? How can I align this to one of our key strategies and outcomes? And if I can, then chances are it'll probably have a pretty good audience, especially if it's got a good ROI attached to it.
I would say one of the exercises we're going through right now with change management is with a big implementation at these early stages, looking at our different service lines and how they operate and really talking about what are they doing today and how are they doing it? What are we asking them to do tomorrow and how are they doing it? How is it going to benefit them? And what are going to be the gaps still? and just really taking the time to document that and write it out. And I said earlier about user personas, and it's so important here to really understand that not every service line, not every job level or job role is going to be operating the same way. So keeping that in mind, it's not just sending out communications and emails and putting together a recording, but it's really talking to your users to have them understand how it's going to benefit them in those early stages.
The last thing that I'd say is probably twofold. One is, clearly setting expectations. We're implementing a new CRM. We are not going to have 100% adoption in the first 12 months.
Right.
We need to be realistic about results. And sometimes it's painful. We don't think it's what they want to hear. But ultimately, we're setting ourselves up for failure if we're setting the bar that's not achievable or a little bit too high. I think having a champion is a critical part to that. And having the support or, based on somebody that's influential as part of that process. And then communication is key, right? If we're going through 12 months, there's no communication, we're not sure what's going on, we know we're spending a lot of money, we don't know why, maybe it's failing, but here's what our plans are to fix that concern or issue. It's going to take a little bit longer. If there's no communication, we just start making assumptions. And assumptions usually end up resulting in the outcome we're not looking for. And so I think communication is key, coming up with the right cadence to do that. We talked about mapping out that, strategy, that plan, that timeline, and keeping the right people or stakeholders involved, in any part of that process.
Amazing. Awesome. Well, thank you all for the questions. We are wrapping up. I think there is a couple more questions there that we didn't have time to answer, but we will answer them for you and send them out after the close of this webinar. I wanted to just wrap this up and say thank you to everybody and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.